Alrighty, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being here at the seminar. Today's special because we had actually someone traveling for about 16 to 18 hours to get here to deliver the seminar, and that's our guest from Nigeria, so welcome. We're going to introduce the two speakers in a minute by Jim House, but first I'm going to introduce Jim House, and I asked Jim, send me your bio, and you know Jim, he sent me a whole page, and so I'm just going to read out.
Right?
I'm going to read out what he wrote, and he said, for me, just keep it simple. Jim House, Professor and Head, Department of Food and Human Nutritional Sciences. I don't think we need anything else.
Thanks, Anamika. Because I do want to save the time for our two distinguished speakers today. So it's my honor to introduce our speakers today. First, we have Dr. Clement Adebooye, and Clement is from the University Department of Crop Production and Protection, Obafemi Awolowo University in Nigeria. And Clement has a very extensive background, a lot of international work, working with the German government, Japanese governments, has extensive experience working in this area, and we're really excited to have him visiting the Department of Food and Human Nutritional Sciences as a visiting scholar, working with Dr. Rotimi Aluko, who's a professor in our Department of Food and Human Nutritional Sciences. Dr. Aluko has an extensive background in food science, is a certified food scientist, has numerous publications. I could go on, but if I were to actually read the entire bio, it would take up the entire 45 minutes. But I do want to say that we are in the presence of fine fellows. We have two very fine fellows here today because if you actually look at their bios, both gentlemen have fellows within, at least 5 fellows as I count, in between the two of them for their various societies. And so they're very distinguished speakers today that we have the presence of, or pleasure of listening to. So to start with, I'd like to invite Clement to come forward and present on the topic of the MicroVeg project, which is really a collaborative project between Clement and Dr. Aluko, funded by IDRC. And so I think we're really excited to hear about this project. And so please join with me in welcoming Clement to the podium.
Good afternoon, distinguished colleagues. It's my pleasure to be here today to have my first shot on talking to audience at the University of Manitoba. This project started in 2011, and it started with the University of Manitoba, Cape Breton University, Sydney, Nova Scotia, the Obafemi Awolowo University, then Osun State University. The first phase of the project was completed in 2014, and we migrated to a second phase, which then incorporated Benin Republic because the same eating habit is prevalent in parts of Nigeria and major part of Benin Republic. So the project for 2015 to 2018 included both Nigeria and Benin Republic. And the question I'm going to be answering today will be how effective are the technologies and scaling up strategies tested by the MicroVeg project. For that phase of the project, we have the University of Manitoba playing special and prominent role in the area of food science and value addition. The project is made up of 7 departments. 7 departments, as you see: agronomy, food science and value addition, general studies, extension, economic studies, social science and scaling up, youth in agriculture program. I will be talking on 6 of the programs, excluding this. So Dr. Aluko will come up to give you snippets on our achievement in the area of food science and value addition. So I'll be talking on 6 departments. Therefore, the approach I will take will be that of giving you the key messages and giving you some special introductions into how some things were done and what challenges we have faced and how we overcame the challenges. Therefore, the 4 MicroVeg technologies are the following. Agronomic practices. We looked at the totality of agronomic package for indigenous vegetables. Then we looked at fertilizer microdosing, which is a form of precision agriculture. Then value addition, as I said, Dr. Aluko will take this on, and then seed production. Then we have our logo. This is Nigeria, and this is Benin Republic. That's the logo for our project. The question of food security in West Africa. West Africa is the only place in the world where crop production per capita is decreasing. 2, our IDRC project sought to improve food security via fertilizer microdosing of indigenous vegetables with an innovation platform approach to scale it up. The indigenous vegetables, what about them? The indigenous vegetables are highly nutritious species, and they are sources of income for the home front. And for these vegetables, there are very few information on their agricultural practices. So, one of the major reasons that we have to research them. Our project focused on combining fertilizer microdosing with optimum irrigation, that's water management, for the production of 3 high-premium indigenous vegetables, which we are selected on the basis of multi-dimensional analysis. And these are the vegetables you see. This, the Amaranthus viridis. This is the Ugu, Telferia occidentalis. And this is Igbagba, we call it in West Africa, botanically known as Solanum macrocarpum. Fertilizer microdosing. What is this thing called fertilizer microdosing? Fertilizer microdosing is placement of small amount of fertilizer, just of this quantity, for crops need. It's low-tech precision agriculture. It typically doubles yield in cereals, but is yet untested in many other crops. Microdosing is a bridge through gateway technology towards integrated soil fertility management, ISFIM. It's attractive because it is simple and provides high yield increases, and it conserves fertilizer. Also, it saves farmers a lot of cost. It's environmentally friendly, and it preserves the ecosystem. The innovation platform for scaling up. Innovation platform is a derivation that comes out of how do we scale up technologies. It involves the entire people. It's a learning process, as you have seen. All the actors in the production chain of indigenous vegetables come together, and they diagnose their problems, identify opportunities, and find ways to achieve their goals with the help of the project personnel. It focuses on women. Therefore, it has what they call gender focus, and it requires flexibility from the researchers. So researchers are highly flexible, and that is what you see here. You see people, a lot of people here sitting down and discussing, men and women, talking together on the basis of what are their needs. We also have a specific strategy for improving vegetable production in schools, so that from the beginning you raise agricultural entrepreneurs, youth entrepreneurs, so that you build champions for food security in different parts of the country, Nigeria and Benin Republic. And also you try to generate money for the schools, because the produce by these children, you see their vegetables, they are sold. You can see people exchanging money here. You can see their field here. You can also see their field here. You can see the children holding vegetables. So it's a strategy that the project used. We call it Youth Vegetable Scientist Club, that we formed in about 181 schools. You will see, I will expand further on that as I move on. Technicalities. The technicalities of MicroVeg project. The first one is that scaling up is a highly capital-intensive project, and you need to get people who know about it. And that's why you have to link up with NGOs. Therefore, the successes I will be mentioning here today are recorded as a result of the extra work done by the NGOs. If you write proposal on scaling up and you don't involve NGOs, it's likely to fail, because these NGOs are the ones that have the instruments of intervention in the communities. So, the scientific component of the project was handled by the scientists in Canada, in Nigeria, and in Benin Republic. For example, the value addition that we are talking about, handled in the laboratories there in Canada, and then at the University of Saskatchewan, at the Canada Light Source of the University of Saskatchewan. What are the findings of this project? Without going to the intricacies of materials and methods, I want to give you an idea of what MicroVeg project achieved. First, when you look at vegetable production based on a 0.5 hectare land area, farmers were able to generate net income of $3,807 in Benin Republic and $3,650 in Nigeria. Therefore, for every $1 invested in vegetable production, you generate 0.8 cents in Benin and then 0.5 cents in Nigeria. Also, average fresh leaf of vegetable yield doubled in both Benin and Nigeria. And this is important because these are vegetables that were never planted before. A contributory factor to this yield increase is the input of organic manure for production at the rate of 5 tons per hectare. The combined application of fertilizer, microdosing, and manure led to balance, positive nitrogen balance for the first vegetable amaranthus, plus 60.8 kilograms per hectare of nitrogen when you applied microdosing at the level of 60 kilograms nitrogen per hectare. And this is what you get for African basil, and this is what you get for Telferia. For water, our water management technology showed us that to produce 1 kilogram of amaranthus, water requirement is reduced from 450 liters on traditional irrigation to 200 liters under our capillary irrigation system that we developed in the project. And this translated to water saving of approximately 2.2 million liters of hectares and 8.0 million liters of hectare in the rainforest and savanna ecosystem of Nigeria and Benin Republic, respectively. You can see this major because of a problem of climate change and drought onset in different parts of the country early in the season. So people run short of water. And as a result of that technology that we developed, farmers can save up to 4-fold of water based on our technology. Our project was targeted to reach 250,000 farmers, but we overshot that. We actually reached 337,000 farmers with 56% women. We integrated, as I said earlier, in the youth empowerment scheme. We integrated 181 secondary schools, 124 in Nigeria and 57 in Benin, into our project. And we trained them in vegetable science and production technologies. And you could see in the previous pictures that these children are already selling vegetables. We also trained 957 teachers, made up of 881 in Nigeria and 76 in Benin Republic. We are glad to report that there was no vegetable science club in the schools at the takeoff of our project, but we established these clubs and we reached 87,570 students, made up of 51% female, both in Nigeria and Benin Republic. And it's gladdening to report also that Young Vegetable Scientists Club is now a policy of government in southwestern Nigeria, a product of this project. In Nigeria, majority of the actors were vegetable producers, as you see, because, as you know, it's production business. Vegetable marketers included this. Sorry, please. Average land area per farmer devoted to vegetable production tripled in Benin, and it ran 8 times more in Nigeria. Reason why it went 8 times more in Nigeria and only tripled in Benin was that in Nigeria, this project started as far back as 2011, and it only started in Benin Republic in 2015. So Nigeria had a better time advantage because before this project, we had run another project called NICANVEG, Nigeria-Canada Vegetable Project. So Nigeria had that advantage of earlier takeoff than Benin Republic. Also, our project facilitated negotiations for loan with microfinance banks, and this was done by our NGOs. And we secured loans for our farmers to the tune of 13 million naira, which is about $37,142 for vegetable production. But instructive also to note that the federal rate on loan in Nigeria is 90%, but we got the loan for our farmers at 5.6%, meaning that project can intervene to get better deal for farmers. We developed online GIS-based reference map, which we are housing at the University of Saskatoon, and this is the website. We are using that to estimate what fertilizer and water needs, as well as profitability for any of the sites in Nigeria and Benin Republic. It's remote. You can input the data, and then rainfall amount, input amount, and everything, and you can get how much profit you are likely to make by producing any of the vegetables that we are dealing with in this project. We perform synchrotron-based research at the Canada Light Source at the University of Saskatoon, And that has given us some interesting results. We found that forms of carbon depend upon ecoregions rather than the vegetable choice of fertilizer application, implying that this element is not strongly affected by microveg practices over the time frame of this project. But this is a question of sustainability. We still need longer term of studies to really affirm and ascertain this statement. One of our communication strategies called RAM-LF4 radio program, which I'm sure one of our colleagues here know very well, Bob Eilers. He knows about that. He loves that advert on the radio. It runs every day on the radio, and it reached not less than 10 million people daily. And this program has been categorized to be very useful by most farmers. It gives information about activities on vegetable value chain, everything you can talk about, production, value addition, marketing, everything. The program tells people where the vegetables are, where they can buy them, at what price. It's a daily program that runs on radio and television. Our project organized International Conference on Indigenous Vegetables in Africa in Cotonou in 2017. A total of 11 countries attended that project, 79 researchers. IDRC and Global Affairs Canada attended the conference, and we are publishing the proceeding in Acta Horticulturae, which is a publication of the International Society for Horticultural Science. I'm sure by the end of this week, the publication should be out. We are glad also to report that we have graduated 3 PhDs, not one, sorry. 3 PhDs we graduated on this project. We graduated 35 bachelor, 8 master students, and we are brushing up additional 12 MSc and 3 PhD students. One of them is in this university, who will finish in about less than a year. Have completed their programs in 2019. We are also glad to report that we have published 26 peer-reviewed articles from this project in high-impact journals. And 7 other articles are undergoing review at journal level. We made over 30 television appearances in addition to our daily radio jingles. And we published 5 newsletters. I'm going to provide copies of that for people who are interested. And our website, as of today, had been visited by more than 46,000 people, www.microveg.org. You can access it. We presented over 30 papers at international conferences during the life of this project. What are the approaches to scaling up? Approaches to scaling up, the major drivers of our technologies are the simplicity, the affordability, the profitability, and the farmers' friendliness of all our technologies. So we fine-tune the technologies and we scale them up through 2 approaches, but I will be talking only on one of the approaches, and that is the innovation platform. I will expatiate on that as we go on. To distinguish the two, IP, which we call innovation platform, is a cooperative system which includes all the stakeholders, whereas the satellite dissemination approach, which we call SDA, relies on information and capacity building, training, feed days. We compared the 2 of them, and these are the results. Okay. You have to reach out to farmers. You have to launch the program, document all your technologies, and intervene. So you are scaling up from step 1 to step 2, step 2 to 3, 3 to 4. And it's at this point that you say farmers are successful. If you are stuck here, it means you cannot move to this place and you cannot move to this place. You see that as I go on. Innovation platform operations. How do you operate innovation platform? The first thing you have to do is to do what they call awareness creation advocacy. Awareness creation and advocacy in our part of the world, West Africa, you will need to make a lot of noise. And the noise is made on the radio, on the television. You have to talk too much with the people, stakeholders. You don't get tired of talking. You've got to be talking to people because there will be resistance. Launching, cell meetings, value chain analysis, issues, decisions. And then you come to issues resolution. How do you convince people? Then you employ these strategies. Involvement of relevant actors, negotiations, engagement with banks, engagement with other actors, support. And then sustainable, you convince people by presenting better farming techniques. You have to convince them by reaching out to banks and sign agreements on their behalf. Private partnership, you have to be visiting them regularly, and you must have the strategy of resolving crises, especially on the issue of leadership and money. Yes, I've talked about this before. Nigeria, we reached a total of 337. The totality of the farmers reached Nigeria and Benin total, 337, female, male, and you can see the statistics. We achieved not less than 50% women involvement in the project. Status of scale-up, all the actors involved. You see the vegetable producers, the processors, vegetable marketers, transporters, extension, seed suppliers, fertilizer supplier, all of them there. 18 months, 24 months, 30 months, 36 months. You can see what we achieved at the end of 36 months with respect to the value actors that were involved in the project. Impacts of IP. The impacts of IP is based on how far you are able to identify problems of the farmers and the actors. You must know what their problems are. When you know what their problems are, then you find a system of intervention. If the farmers say, yes, basic input for dry season farming we don't have, how do you intervene as a project? Transportation we don't have, how do you intervene? Access to high quality seeds we don't have, what do you do? Access to loan we don't have, what do you do? Disease and pests, what do you do? Access to fertilizer, what do you do? Access to land, what do you do? These are the solutions. And we implemented all this, and things worked positively for the project. The Young Vegetable Scientists Club, as I told you before, we reached a total of 82,000 students that we integrated into the project and 957 teachers. Yeah, you can see our feeds. This IDRC officer, Innocent Butare, when he visited Nigeria together with some officers, with some students in schools. You can also see students, everybody working on vegetable. Osun State Youth Empowerment Program, we included in the project. You can see, I spoke about how you intervene. You can see equipment and facilities given to people. You can see the water pumps and irrigation system. You can see how we boosted marketing by customizing our sales point for farmers, for vegetable marketers. We built all this and we gave to farmers free so that we promoted vegetable business. And people would rather go and buy from these niche shops than to go to just any other shop to buy. So it's one of our strategies. This is one of the big farmers around, Abdullahi. This is IDRC officer Innocent Butare, who visited Nigeria at a time. And you can see, these people in the farm site of this man now export vegetables to Europe because of the intervention of this project. Actually, vegetable export is now a big business in Nigeria as a result of the intervention of MicroVeg project. Challenges to scaling up. What are the challenges? This is not a sweet, it's a sweet story, but difficult to achieve. The problem is that there are several lessons to be learned from scaling up. Generally, the first one is general apathy of stakeholders because the concept of IP was new to farmers and other actors, and there was fear of failure. People knew only about cooperative system. But now you are bringing IP, bringing everybody together. So, apathy. 2, conflict of interest among stakeholders with regard to leadership and group action. You know, for cooperatives before, you have specific groups in different cooperatives, but you are not bringing everybody together. Who will be the leader? The question arises in Africa, who will be the leader? So you have to solve that problem in our part of the world. Resistance to change, because most actors were only conversant with cooperative system, which is narrow in perspective. And lastly, poor willingness in the area of investment of personal time by the different actors to propel the common goal. The concept of IP requires a sacrifice of time at conception and growth stages. You can see some of the pictures, different actors launching innovations platform. You can see them. You can also see pictures of different. Rotimi will give you details about some of these things as he gives his lecture today. These are some of interesting pictures of how the project ran. You can also see students and so many things, the scientific component of the project on microdosing. Yes, at the end of this project, IDRC wrote this beautiful letter. They said, "Dear Clement and all other colleagues from MicroVeg team, thanks for taking time into account. Thanks for taking into account our comments in the revised version of the final report. I'm very pleased to inform you that after reviewing the report, we found it to be much clearer and compelling, and consequently, the report has been approved. Congratulations to all the team for this hard work. It is an impressive list of accomplishments of which the whole team may be proud of. The list of scientific publications is really outstanding, and the project surpassed the scaling targets initially set. There is exciting new scientific knowledge generated, and the team has clearly shown that high-quality research can lead to meaningful and positive impact on the lives of the farmers. Not many teams can show those milestones. We know that this is no simple task, and therefore, we want to convey IDRC and Global Affairs Canada appreciation for all your efforts and hard work. We are certain that this will pay off well in several fronts in the year to come. I don't bother to read the remaining part of the report. Thank you for listening. You may want to visit us at this website.
Well, thank you very much, everybody, for coming. And thanks so much to my colleague, Dr. Adebooye, for such a wonderful presentation. I thought it would be good for him to give like the usual agronomic background, and then I can just talk very briefly in terms of what we do with the vegetables for value addition, because one of the key objectives of the project, actually expected by IDRC, is not only the results on the field. They wanted to say how can we improve the value addition of these vegetables to provide more money for farmers as well as processors in Nigeria. So I'm going to go very briefly, just tell you about the main objectives of the value addition, and then some of the things we did in terms of extracting the polyphenols from the leaves, and also food formulation, incorporating the leaves into bread, and then looking at some of the potential health effects and how we scaled up for commercialization. And then lastly, looking at also fruit juice and its commercialization. So very briefly, the objectives, we were to develop optimized processing conditions for an aqueous system to actually produce polyphenol concentrates from the leaves. And the aqueous is, is more acceptable in the industry because the presence of solvents sometimes discourages innovation. So using an aqueous process was our key goal initially. And then after extracting the polyphenol concentrate, we wanted to look at the food and health uses. How can we use these concentrates for food and health improvement? And then we incorporated the leaves into bread. I wanted to find out how can we scale it up from just a laboratory process into a commercial scale process. And then determine some of the potential health benefits of this the type of fortified bread. So again, I'm going to focus mostly on the results and not really the methodology as such. But just to let you know how we did the extractions, the optimization. Very simple extraction time of 4 hours at a temperature of 50 to 60 degrees Celsius. Again, just using water. The water requirements is 20 parts to 1 part of dried leaves. And then the extract yield, based on this protocol, we were able to extract 35% of the original weight of the dried leaves. So again, this interprets to the fact that it can be commercially very, very successful. So what did we do with the concentrate? The first we wanted to look at was the ability of these polyphenols to scavenge free radicals to act as antioxidants and other properties, because again, we wanted to see whether we can actually use this concentrate in human health to improve human health. Okay. And so this is just a result of the scavenging properties of one of the leaves, the solanum crop. Again, what is interesting here is the fact that we find that at the various levels of fertilizers that were used, the microdosing fertilizer levels, that the leaves all perform very well. But of course, one thing to note here is the fact that we can see that after a certain level of concentration of the polyphenol concentrate, the ability to scavenge free radicals actually decrease. Okay, so this is very, very important for us because it tells us the fact that when we're going to use this in a human intervention, we have to be very careful of the dose. Otherwise, when you get too high, the polyphenols actually behave as a pro-oxidant. They actually can cause health problem. All right, so this sort of give us an idea in terms of how far we can go in incorporating these polyphenols into human food. Same results were obtained for the other two vegetables. Again, after a certain level of concentration, you can see a decrease in the antioxidant properties of these leaves. Okay. But one other thing we're very excited about is we want to look at the ability of this concentrate to inhibit an enzyme called acetylcholinesterase, which is one of the major drug targets for Alzheimer's disease. Okay, this enzyme now is being looked as probably the only solution to, at least managing Alzheimer's disease, because of the fact that these enzymes play a key role, okay, in how the brain manages information in terms of transmission of information. And usually in people with Alzheimer's disease, the level of this enzyme is too high. And what happens is that because it is too high, the enzyme degrades, okay, the messenger molecule for neurotransmission, okay? And so drugs have been developed to sort of reduce, okay, to temper the activity of this enzyme. And so we looked at the possibility of this polyphenol concentrate in also tempering the activity of this enzyme. And you can see here that, again, based on those, we're able to achieve inhibition of the enzyme. This first one, galantamine, is actually the drug that is used in the pharmaceutical industry to intervene for people with Alzheimer's disease. You can see that for the polyphenols, we got fairly very similar inhibition, even a little bit more than the drug itself. Okay, the only key question, of course, is can these polyphenols cross the blood-brain barrier and actually get into the brain? Okay, so again, this is based on the in vitro work. At least we know that these polyphenols are potentially very suitable agents that can be used to intervene to limit the pathology of Alzheimer's disease. And then the other thing we looked at was trypsin. Okay, trypsin, the inhibition of trypsin is very important because a lot of viral infection is because of activity of enzymes of the virus that is very similar to trypsin. Okay, so trypsin inhibitors are very, very important in limiting viral replication and viral infection. And so again, we looked at it because one of the reasons we did it is because in traditional folklore, especially in West Africa, we know that sometimes some of these leaves are taken as medicinal foods, to sort of limit infection or to treat infection. So we wanted to see whether these polyphenols can actually also reduce trypsin activity. Okay, and we got very good inhibition with the with amaranthus, sort of very medium inhibition with the solanum, but for the telferia, the inhibition was very, very poor. So, but basically, it's telling us that for the amaranthus leaves, it might be possible for us to also use these polyphenols to intervene in these types of viral infections. And this was just the kinetics. We wanted to look at how do these polyphenols actually work. And based on the kinetic results, it shows that these polyphenols bind to the active site of the enzyme and then block the access of substrates to the active site. And so we know that definitely these polyphenols, they actually can bind to the trypsin enzyme and actually prevent substrate from binding. So again, this shows that it's a competitive inhibition and is very, very desirable. Okay, most drugs are sort of formulated to be competitive inhibitors of their targets. All right, so in this case, the polyphenols were very good competitive inhibitors. We also looked at the ability of these polyphenols to inhibit enzymes involved in carbohydrate metabolism, okay, because of diabetes and obesity, which is becoming really a big problem. So two of the enzymes involved in carbohydrate digestion are alpha amylase and alpha glucosidase. So we looked at the inhibition of alpha glucosidase. And again, you can see Acarbose is the industry drug that is sold for people who want to reduce the carbohydrate in their blood or the glucose in their blood, people with diabetes. Okay, so we compared the polyphenols to Acarbose, and even though it's not as great as Acarbose, but you can see a concentration-dependent increase in the inhibition of this enzyme activity by the polyphenols. So again, suggesting that these polyphenols may be useful, okay, in limiting the rate of glucose inflow into the blood from the diet, okay, by inhibiting the activity of this enzyme. Same results was obtained for the alpha amylase, which is the principal enzyme that digests starch when we eat starch. The first enzyme that attacks starch in our digestive tract is alpha amylase. And so if you can limit the activity of alpha amylase, you can actually reduce the rate at which the glucose flows into the blood of somebody, for example, who has diabetes, or somebody who is obese, and they want to reduce the caloric value of the food by reducing digestion. And again, you can see that we had a concentration-dependent increase in the inhibition of amylase, again showing that this polyphenol concentrate might be potentially very good to intervene in such a metabolic situation to reduce obesity and also to reduce the pathology of diabetes. So the next thing we moved to was to see again whether this polyphenol concentrate may be able to reduce blood pressure, okay, because we know from the wine hypothesis that wine polyphenol, actually resveratrol, have been associated, okay, with the ability to actually help with reducing blood pressure. Can leaf polyphenols also do the same thing by reducing blood pressure? So we fed this, we did this experiment using spontaneously hypertensive rats. So these are rats that develop hypertension as they grow. So we can intervene and see whether this product can reduce their blood pressure. Okay? So very briefly, the polyphenol concentrate was dissolved, and then it was given to the rats at a dose of 100 milligrams per kilogram body weight. So this works out to about 1 gram per day for a 70 kilogram person. So it's not really too much. It's something we can take. It's only 1 gram per day, all right? And then we measure the blood pressure parameters using our telemetry. And so briefly, these are the results. You can see for Telferia, in terms of systolic blood pressure, the highest decrease was again in Amaranthus. Okay, you can see the one in blue, okay, both systolic blood pressure and diastolic blood pressure. We were very surprised that the Solanum concentrate was not very, very effective in terms of blood pressure reduction. But the Amaranthus was the best, followed by Telferia, by reducing not only systolic blood pressure, but even the heart rate. Heart rate is one of the things that eventually will damage the heart of people, with hypertension, because the heart rate becomes excessive. And so you can see that the polyphenols were able to reduce the heart rate, actually for Amaranthus and Telferia. Again, Solanum wasn't very, very effective. Okay? And so we also looked at green bread development and their scale up. Like I said, one of the original objectives was how can we also use these vegetables in formulating food products, because some people might not like to eat vegetables, but maybe if they eat a product that has vegetables, then they can benefit from the active effect of these vegetable products. So basically, this is just a normal bread recipe in terms of baking the bread. All we have done here is simply incorporate some level of vegetable dried flour, okay, and compared to the one that doesn't have any vegetables. So this is the control, and then we compared it to the one that has 1% vegetables, 2% and 3%. So the baking was just a normal process of baking bread. So just to show you, for example, this is the control, and then as you go to the left, you will have increase in the level of leaf incorporation, and of course you can see it becomes greener. It just, normal. So that's why we call it green bread, okay? Basically, so that people could know that, because if you just sell it like that, you might think it's bad, but we call it green bread so they know that it's supposed to be green, all right? Yeah. So, yeah, yeah. So to scale up, because scale up again, like I said, is one of the key things we wanted to do. We did scale up at the University of the Adebooye University, bakery, and then the bread was sold to the public to sort of gauge whether they will actually buy the bread, okay, or whether they enjoy eating it, okay. So we sold the one that has 3%, leaf inclusion. The batch size was about 6 kilograms. We made 120 loaves for each batch. And surprisingly, all the loaves sold out every day. Okay, eventually when people realized the potential health benefits, we had 5 production staff, baking period of 150 minutes. And in terms of potential margin, profit margin, it was still very, very profitable. Of course, this is in a Nigerian currency, but that is still very, very profitable for an average baker. Okay. And so we had discussions with the Bakers Association in terms of actually moving this to the market. We are just waiting for approval from Standards Organization of Nigeria, very similar to Health Canada, to approve for the product to actually go into the market. So why are we focusing on the green bread? It's simply because of the potential benefits on cardiac health and function. Before I show you the results, just to show that actually when we incorporate the leaves into the flour, there's actual increase in the polyphenol content. Of course, you can see it in the greenness of the bread, but when we actually analyze, you can see as to increase. For example, for amaranthus, you go from 3.5 to 4.1. For solanum, from 3.87 to 4.1. And for Telferia, from 3.5 to 5.25 in terms of the phenolics present in the bread. So again, the bread was made as usual. We incorporated dry flour, and then once we made the bread, okay, we sort of extracted the bread with water, and then the freeze-dried powder was dissolved into phosphate buffersaline, and then we gave this extract of the bread again to the rats. Like I said, equivalent to about 1 gram per day for a 70 kilogram person. This worked out to about 3 to 4 slices of that bread per day. So it's not really too much, okay, if you want to eat the bread instead of taking the pill, all right? And they measured blood pressure as usual. Again, these are just changes in blood pressure. You can see that for all the samples, though we had various levels of activity, but we had decreases in blood pressure, okay? The gray bar is for captopril, which is the normal drug they will give you, a doctor will give you to reduce your blood pressure. We can see that this, some of these samples were actually as effective as the captopril drug. And this is just the results in terms of the actual numbers. Again, you can see that we had very good reduction in blood pressure in terms of incorporating these leaves into bread and for people to eat that bread and benefit. So this is a typical advertisement at the campus to sort of advertise the bread, just to let them know that this is very rich in proteins, there's antioxidant in the bread, and then we advertise the fact that it could reduce inflammation, cardiovascular benefits, stuff like that. So this actually allowed us to attract people to buy the bread. All right, but of course we still have more work to do. And then finally, in terms of value addition, also looking at how can we put this into a juice. So we tried with pineapple juice because it's a very, very popular juice in West Africa, and so we say, what, if we put this in pineapple juice, will people actually buy? So we tested the commercialization of the apple juice fortified with the leaves. This is just show you the bottles. You can see we put our name there, MicroVeg, to show that this comes from MicroVeg. The green bottles just to sort of, shade the green color of the juice itself. And you saw this picture before. So this is actually on the shelf for sales. We actually test marketed the product on a local grocery store to see whether people will buy the juice. And of course, when we went there ourselves, of course, we toasted to the health of the group using the juice. We all tested the juice. It was very, very nice. Dr. Rondon from IDRC was the one that actually came to supervise the project. So we went to the grocery store where this was being sold, and we actually purchased some and sort of toasted to the project. And this is just an example of a customer that is actually buying the juice, paying for the juice. And it was very interesting. After Dr. Rondon tested the juice, he actually bought a 6-pack that he was going to take back to Canada because it was so nice. We were very surprised. It was really, very, very tasty, and he really so much enjoyed it. And he paid for a 6-pack that he was going to ship back to Canada for tasting. So to conclude very briefly, so that we can have time for questions, We had successful incorporation of dried vegetable leaves into bread. I only gave the example of bread and pineapple juice, but we actually, incorporated these into different products in Nigeria and Benin Republic. Infant bread, breakfast corn gruel in Nigeria, various confectionaries in Benin and Nigeria, other fruit juices, not just pineapple. We trained over 100 bakery owners so that they can actually know how to incorporate the leaves into the bread properly. And apart from the bakery owners, we also trained over 5,000 people, 68% of which are women, in terms of how to also produce these fortified baked products. Of course, I'm sure you know the reason why there's emphasis on women is the fact that in West Africa, they are the ones that make food for the family. And so we felt that at the local level, apart from the bakery, the women in the various families can actually make these products for their children and their family. So we trained over 5,000 of them in how to do this type of fortified bakery. Like I said, the polyphenols we recovered, from the bread sample. So why we did this was because we want to be sure that after the heat treatment, because you have to bake at high temperature, will the polyphenols still be active? Okay, so that was why we did it. Okay, so now we know that even at the temperature of baking, the polyphenols are still very active. They can still work, so we're confident about that. So we show that these polyphenols can lower blood pressure, especially in hypertensive rat models. The antioxidant, antihypertensive properties, okay, were dependent on vegetable variety. So if we're going to move ahead, it seems overall the amaranthus variety is for now the best in terms of incorporation for health benefits. So we're probably going to move ahead with the amaranthus variety. Okay. Like I said, we introduced the vegetable fortified pineapple juice into the market, and we're hoping that this will, sort of increase the cultivation of vegetables, actually in West Africa. And so the next step now is that we have, try to get more money from IDRC so that we actually, because all we've done so far has been in rats. We know that sometimes when you go to human beings, it might be different. So we're trying to get more money to actually do human intervention with the bread and the polyphenol concentrate to see whether they can actually be of benefit to people with diabetes and people with cardiovascular disease. So we're crossing our fingers. Hopefully we'll know by spring whether we'll get the funding, and then we'll be prepared to do this intervention in Nigeria. And these are just some of the articles from the value addition group. Like Professor Adebooye already said, we have a lot of publications that have come out in the past 4 years, but these are just some from the value addition. And we still have very many in the pipeline that are coming up. And just to thank the team in Benin and Nigeria, as well as the PhD students involved, and of course the postdoctoral fellow, Dr. Alashi, who supervised a lot of the value addition work. Yeah, thank you.
Would you like to come forward, and we'll open the floor up for questioning from the audience? We have questions for the MicroVeg team. Want to start the ball rolling? Well, I'll start. You two have established a fairly successful collaboration over the past, it looks like, what, 8 years, 9 years? What would you classify as sort of the hallmarks of a successful international collaboration? How do you keep it going?
Well, before now, as I mentioned at the beginning of the talk, I've had very good collaboration with Wole Akinremi, who's seated here, starting 2011. And to go straight to your question on what it looks like, and how can we move it forward? I think that it has to do with synergy. Synergy. People working together in areas that they both understand. And that is it. Remember, in this project, we have a Francophone component. People who don't speak the same language as we do. So, I mean, in Benin Republic, just by the side of Nigeria, they speak French. And all of us in the team, we speak English. But we have to work together. And it worked out well because of what I term synergy and understanding. So understand each other. That makes collaboration to work. That's just the best.
Yeah, and just to add two other things. One is leadership. When this project started, because of the nature of the teams, like Professor Adebooye said, you have French-speaking, English-speaking, different locations for the agricultural projects. We needed leadership in terms of coordination. Otherwise, everybody would just be in there on their own, doing their own thing. And so we're very, very lucky to have him as the coordinator for the project. And I think he made sure that the timelines were kept. The deliverables were on time. I remember several times, he had to go spend weeks in Benin Republic. He will be there to make sure that the work is done, because sometimes when you leave, then, people just say, oh yeah, he's gone, So, so leadership is very important in such collaboration. But more importantly also is communication. We had a very, very effective communication between all the PIs. We usually hold regular, teleconference meetings, either by Skype or by telephone, and we had meetings, physical, meetings. So again, those two, communication and leadership, really were very, very helpful.
Yes, Dr. Bennett.
So for the vegetables, you were extracting mostly the crude extracts.
Yes.
Have you gotten to a stage where you have identified what are the key components which will be responsible for hypertensive activity?
Yes, we did. It's just that again, because of time, I didn't include that. We actually published already. For the three leaves, the three main polyphenols we found were caffeic acid, rutin, and then myristatin. So those were the three main polyphenols we found, but most were actually caffeic acid and rutin. The myristatin was fairly very low in concentration, but we found, caffeic acid and rutin. They were the main polyphenols in the leaves.
So among those vegetables, what were the range of concentrations in general? You said some were more effective than others. If we base on those three polyphenols?
Yes, I can't remember exactly the concentration of the polyphenols, but I know it's they're like about I think 5 milligrams per gram, between 1 and 5 or 6 milligrams per gram in terms of, say, caffeic acid and rutin. The myristatin was lower. I think it was like less than 1 milligram per gram. But in terms of differences between the leaves, we were not able to associate the difference in activity solely to the difference in the polyphenol content. Yeah, so we think it's either because of synergy, or maybe there are other compounds that are present that we haven't identified, and that's why we are going to the next stage. The PhD student work will involve, we're going to use LCMS, because we only use HPLC to look at the major polyphenols, but now we're going to use the LCMS to find out the other polyphenols that are present that probably are too small to detect by HPLC. And then maybe then we can see the differences, why one polyphenol or one leaf variety is more active than the other.
Yes, sir.
Can they consume just the leaf itself?
Sorry?
So you're talking about breaking it down and putting it in a bunch of different other projects, but can they just be consumed as leaves? And is that the right dosage?
Yeah, you could. You could consume as leaves, just leaves. The problem we're trying to address is the fact that some people don't like it. They don't like to consume lots of vegetables. So we thought if you put it in a common food like bread that virtually everybody eats in the morning, most people don't eat vegetables in the morning or every day. But if you put it in bread, and people eat vegetables, they eat bread every day. So it's very likely that then they can get the regular supply of the polyphenol, the bioactive compounds in the leaves every day. Because the thing with health benefits is that if you just take it, sporadically, you don't get benefits. This needs to be taken, on a regular basis. So that's why eating vegetable leaves, say once or twice a week, will probably not give you this benefit. It needs to be consistent. And so that's why we put it in a popular food like bread that we all eat every day. Yeah.
More storable after it's been.
Yes, also, yeah.
What's your, Clement, what has been your experience with IDRC as a funding partner? And moving forward, and what options or what opportunities do you see to continue to advance this program?
Well, working with IDRC has been very interesting. Our first project was granted by IDRC out of about 472 applications, and only 12 were approved. One is here, remembers the story. The second one, this one, was an in-house call. Out of 12 projects, they approved only 4 to move forward. And out of the 4, this one has been rated to be number 1. IDRC, difficult to please. Difficult to please IDRC. But it's been very interesting working with them, because in the process of working with IDRC, you gain more experience. The way they think differently. And when they can tell you, they can let you know what they want. And it's for you to understand the language that they are speaking. So it's about combining what they offer with what you can offer also, and then work in line with their demands. But totality, IDRC is fantastic in terms of training researchers, training the students, as well as making you to know how to go ahead with the development project. And then putting science at the background. That's what IDRC is.
Yeah, and just to add that they, just like most other projects, actually publicly funded projects, they put a lot of emphasis on student training. So they want us to train future scientists. It's a key part of the project. And that's why actually they love the young vegetable scientist club in Nigeria. They love it so much because they know that these are high school students who eventually could become vegetable scientists. All right, but also they also appreciate excellence. When you're doing very well, they'll let you know. And actually, a very good story that came out of this, which the university benefited from, University of Manitoba, is with the IDRC funded another vegetable project in natural resources in our environment, in Bangladesh, which I'm also part of it. And I didn't know this until we went to Bangladesh for the inception meeting. And then the IDRC representative told us, he told my colleague, in natural resources, she said, be thankful to Dr. Aluko and MicroVeg that if not for the success of MicroVeg, they were not going to fund any other vegetable project. So we were all surprised. We didn't know that before then. It was because of the success of our project that the Bangladesh vegetable project was funded. So again, showing that even though they are very difficult to please, but at the same time they recognize excellence in terms of research.
Other questions? I think we have time for maybe one more question.
We normally eat veggies for micronutrients. So are you incorporating those studies to just compare the micronutrients from vegetable to vegetable?
Yeah, I believe we also looked at micronutrients. Yeah, we did, in terms of the contributions. Again, it's just because of time. But for all the fortified foods, we looked at the increase or the decrease, whatever, the changes in micronutrient level, iron, because iron is very, very important. especially in Africa, because of the problem of iron deficiency. And another advantage, apart from what we have shown today, is the fact that by putting the vegetables into these foods, you actually increase the iron content of those foods, which again is very, very beneficial for people in those areas because of the known problem of iron deficiency anemia.